The world of cell phones used to be astounding. Every year or two they used to change massively, new shapes, new sizes, bigger screens, and then they started to get so good that it all slowed down. And today we have got the next iteration of Samsung's Galaxy, the S22, and this is the Plus in the beautiful new green color. The funny thing about the green is Apple just released a green color for their iPhone Pro and Pro Max, which some of us here in the tech world kind of thought was a little bit of a chuckle, but hey, it's okay. You know, everybody brings colors out, someone else kind of likes it, so they bring one out too. I like the green color. It's a weird green. At first glance, it almost looks like it's not green, depending on the lighting that you've got. It's like a bluey kind of green tone. We did a review on the Samsung S22 Ultra in the burgundy. You can go check that one out over here or here, depending on which side the thing appears. And the burgundy was a beautiful color as well. They make a green Ultra. Honestly, if I was buying an Ultra now, I'd do one of the custom colors that Samsung lets you do on their website that they make to order, because there's about 4 more choices there and they're really beautiful. There's a really pretty blue on there. It's like an ice blue, kind of like the ice blue on the Pro Max. And we're going to be dropping that video here in just a little while. So let's talk about the S22 Plus. Apparently, this is the least selling of the 3 S22s. The Ultra is selling the most. The regular S22 is selling second best. And Piggy in the middle is like the middle child, right? Just seems to be there and no one knows what to do with it. And so it's not selling so well. And I think that's a shame, because I've been playing with this and I put it into my rotation now as a daily driver so I could goof off with it. And I've just had the S22 Ultra as a daily driver for about a week or two prior to this. So before we get into specs and all the kind of uber geek stuff, let's just talk about the phone for a second here and what it feels like to use. The Ultra, and I want to just preface this, in case you can't tell from watching, I'm actually 6'4". You only see this bit of me, but there is like another piece of my body. So I am pretty tall and I've got a decent sized hand. So keep that in mind as I'm talking about the feel of these things in your hand. The Ultra feels like a big phone. I mean, it feels like a big phone. Even in my hands, which are pretty big, that bad boy, you knew you were holding it. I mean, it was wide. It's got these kind of sharp corners that are 90-degree almost versus the rounded edges here of the regular S22. And I think it's a combination of the heft of the Ultra and those corners that just make it a little bit different to hold in your hand. And trust me when I say this, go to Best Buy, hold them both in your hand and check them out, because on paper, I still don't believe Samsung is telling the truth. From a holding perspective in using the phone, the Ultra feels meaningfully wider, meaningfully taller, and meaningfully heavier. On paper, it's like a couple millimeters here and a couple millimeters there. And it's voodoo, people, I'm telling you, it makes no sense. The S22 Plus, when I first opened the box, I almost thought I'd bought the wrong one. I thought they'd ship me the regular S22. It looked so much smaller. And even after using it now for the last few days, it still feels so small in my hand and in my pocket. I don't know why. I don't know if it is this corner thing. I don't know if it's just because it's a little bit lighter. I don't know if it's a combination of everything. It definitely feels thin and it's very flat. The Ultra has those curved edges. This sucker is flat, kind of iPhone flat. Flat front, flat back, and then the same camera array as last year. So that's enough about fit and feel. I just think, certainly for someone my size, with my size of hand, just to give you some perspective there, if you want to compare the two, this is like the perfect size. It never feels too big to hold. It never feels too heavy to hold. It's not small. I got plenty of screen real estate. When you look at the screen, the resolution is slightly different than the Ultra. Even though this is 6.6 inches versus 6.8, you wouldn't think that 0.2 makes that much of a difference. But when you're using it and you're looking at the screen, something interesting happens. It's either something to do with the slight difference in res, or it's something to do with the pixel density of how they've mapped the font sizes. And some of you might zoom in, some of you might make your text bigger or smaller depending on eyesight, all that kind of stuff. So obviously this is going to change depending on exactly how you configure your phone. But on the Ultra, what I noticed is things like Gmail and some other apps, things just looked a little bit too big. Like from a balance perspective, they seemed imbalanced to other areas of the phone. On the Plus, I haven't noticed the same thing. I can be browsing, I can go to my text messages, I can go to my Gmail, and generally, everything feels pretty consistent and pretty much the same. Some slight nuances, but nothing major. And yes, I am a little OCD. You might not worry about these kind of things, but I look at a lot of phones and I play with a lot of phones, and you know, we kind of look for the weeds because what else am I going to look for? So I thought it was interesting. I think you will find too. Again, if you can, look at them both side by side and pull up the same app and see how they handle that rendering, because it is interesting. Got the pinhole camera here, which I love on all of the Samsungs, but this is a really nice touch. The other thing that I really do like about Samsungs, and they've done this for a while, you can see it here kind of, I have got my in-display fingerprint reader. Now, some people talk about this and say, oh, but it's not as fast, it's not as good. Listen, it's as good as you make it, and it's as good as you set it up. And so I got a helpful hint from a YouTube video that I watched once, and I can't even remember who it was, but they were going through some top tips on using a Galaxy, and because I've been an iPhone user primarily for a very, very long time, I thought, hey, I'm gonna watch that and see what I don't know. And there was a ton of useful stuff that I didn't know. A good way to make it more accurate is do the same finger multiple times. So you get 5 fingerprints. So instead of just doing it once and then changing to a different finger, do it a second time. And at first I thought, well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But using the phone and then finding myself out in the store, sometimes my thumb's kind of at the bottom, sometimes it's more at the side, or sometimes I'm balancing the phone and it's kind of on the tip. So I can see why if you do a drastic change for fingerprint number 2 that's really fingerprint number 1, you're going to give the phone a little bit more data on the exact nuances of your fingerprint. I guess what I'm saying is it's not the fingerprint reader that's slow, and it's not the fingerprint reader that's the problem. It's the way we put our finger on it, because it's a flat glass screen with a home button. It's a little bit different because you tend to rest the same part of your finger in there on a regular basis because it's beveled and everything else, so it kind of squishes in. You don't get that same luxury on screen. But it works, and it works great, and it's very fast. I've had no issues with it all. This to me is the perfect win. Unlocking is a breeze. You can do the Face ID thing if you want with Samsungs. It's not the same as on an iPhone. It's not face mapping and that kind of stuff, and probably not quite as accurate. I tend to not do it for that reason, but you can. Another thing that's nice about the S22 Plus, and you've heard me talk about this before, I love widgets. I love Android widgets. I really love Samsung's widgets as well. But listen, Google's widgets are beautiful here. As I'm scrolling through, obviously I don't want you to read all the stuff that's in here because it's my daily driver, so these are my real emails. But look how pretty these bad boys are. And I can just scroll through my email. I can archive it straight from here without ever going in. I can see my to-do list. Those things save me time, get to what I want to get to, and then get back to it. I also like to have my steps widget on here, and I'm doing terribly today, but it's early in the morning, so 490 steps is okay. I'll clear my 6,000 by the end of the day. Don't you worry, peeps. Mikey's going to stay healthy. I'll still be here in a few weeks and months doing awesome tech reviews just for you. And you're going to miss them if you don't hit the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. You can hit the bell as well if you want the notifications, but you'll be amazingly awesome if you do. I'm going to love you forever. You're going to love the channel hopefully forever. We're going to be friends. So do it. Just hit that button and we'll carry on. Looking at the cameras on the back, obviously 3 cameras. Ultra has 5. You got to decide if you want the telephoto goodness of the Ultra, but it is a couple $100 more, and you are going to get a bigger physical phone for it. That might work for you. I'm still split between the two, honestly. Part of me wishes I had my Ultra in my hand right now. Part of me is glad that I don't because it was so big, and this just fits so beautifully. But then I think, oh, I want that zoom camera. Even though I never really use the 10 times zoom or the 30 times zoom, it's nice to know I have it. But the cameras are very capable, very confident. Again, I saw somebody post on Twitter recently, I don't know who it was, I'm sorry, I'll do better at remembering these names. He had taken 2 photos, one with an iPhone Pro Max 13 and one with a 2-year-old Samsung Galaxy. Except he didn't tell anybody which was which. And I think it was like 67% of people thought the Samsung's picture looked better than the 2-year newer iPhone. Take it for what you will, it's one little snippet, but I thought it was interesting. The cameras are awesome, they're great. And another feature I really love, and Samsung has this on the S22 Plus, they have it on the Ultra. You might not have heard of this, you might not have played with it a whole lot, But to me, this is like just one of those features that is so underrated, so overlooked, and I don't know why. So I'm gonna lift up here and let you look and peek into my studio. Over here, I've got my front-facing camera. So I can choose that camera if I want. In the big window is the live shot of what I'm actually doing. And over here, I've got my other cameras and I can switch between them. So at any moment in time, if I'm filming, this is particularly useful for like social media posts and that kind of thing. I can have direct view on and I can be looking around and saying, okay, which one do I want to be filming right now? And at the click of a button, I can just change and go from one to the other, zooming in, zooming out. You might say, oh, you could do that anyway. Well, you can, but here's the thing. I can see exactly what's in the shot before I change. So if I know I'm going to zoom in, I can go to my zoom view here and move the camera down just a little bit because I know when I zoom in on this sound panel, I want to get the whole panel in the shot. And then it's exactly where I want it to be. And then I can come back out to this frame. Superb feature. I highlight it because not a lot of people know it's there. Not a lot of people talk about it. And it's a great, great feature that I think you'll get a lot of mileage out of if you goof off and play with it. Camera modes are awesome, as always. You got slow-mo, you got ultra slow-mo, you got 8K recording, you got 4K 60 recording. 8K is 24 frames per second, so it's not really awesome, but it's a start in the right direction. 4K 60 is rocking and you're gonna love it. Something else that's new from Samsung this year on these phones is they still include the Samsung Messages app, but Google Messages, it seems to be like the default. So you can use either one. Obviously, all the Android manufacturers are now pushing Google Messages because Google's finally woken up and decided they're going to do something about the messaging mess. Everybody loves Apple's iMessage. They love the fact that they can send over Wi-Fi. They love the blue bubbles. And with all the carriers doing different things, text messaging, SMS messaging was really the way it was going to happen. Google's pushed this RCS, this rich communication standard that gives you things like dots when somebody's typing back. It gives you interactions and those kind of things. It really steps the game up to be like a true chat messaging app. And interestingly, at the moment, Europe is pushing for legislation that's going to force the big manufacturers to open up the platforms, and iMessage will have to talk to Google Messages, which will have to talk to other messaging apps for companies over a certain size. I think messaging apps should be like email apps. I should be able to use whatever messaging app I want, and I should be able to message someone else even if they're on a different one. It shouldn't be a lock-in. One of the nice things about Android messages is the messages are blue. I know that sounds crazy, but look, people have a thing about this whole green bubble thing, and it's almost like iMessages made green bubbles a dirty word and make you feel bad for getting them. So I find it really interesting that the messages in Android messages are a really nice shade of blue. Blue's a great color. It's very calming, it's very soothing, and it definitely makes you feel nice. But it's super pretty. Listen, a lot of the software on this phone is the prettiest phone software out there. I've said this before, I've said it in other reviews. Samsung's One UI 4, their apps are beautiful. The spacing, the white space, the use of shading and shadows, the tones of the colors, the pastel settings. I honestly think if you didn't know the brand names and you weren't comparing phones to other phones based on who makes them, you would look at the interfaces of this with an iPhone, which I'm going to bring into shot here, and you would think that this is the prettier phone to use in general for most things. Now, let's talk about the two of them as we wrap up here. S22 Plus versus iPhone 13 Pro Max. Everybody's comparing the Ultra to the Pro Max, and I get it. It's the top phone versus the top phone, but I don't know if that's the right comparison. The Ultra has a pen. The Ultra has a 10x optical zoom. The Ultra has 108 megapixels. It has many physical features that just aren't even there on an iPhone 13. So you're comparing two things that aren't apples for apples. When I look at the S22 Plus, I almost think that's a better comparison because it's 3 cameras versus 3 cameras. It's 6.6 versus 6.7, so the screens are almost the same. Very, very similar in a lot of ways, except the S22 Plus is a little bit less expensive. In the hand, again, we've got this strange voodoo happening. It feels meaningfully lighter. And you might argue, well, the iPhone feels like a more substantial phone because it's more solid and it's heavier. You could go that way. I really like the lightness of the S22 Plus. The edges aren't so harsh. The iPhone is very flat, very squared. The Samsung curves the edge slightly. You don't get that harshness on the corner, but you still get the flat front and back. But if you are comparing, don't just think you have to compare the Ultra with the Max. I don't think that's the case. Honestly, I think the Ultra is in a league that's slightly above the Max, and I don't think there is a phone that compares to it, namely because of the pen and the ability to write on the screen and those camera lenses. I think the S22 Plus, if you were really choosing between two largish phones, that's more mainstream for both people. So everybody that's not buying the S22 Plus, go out there and take a look at it. Show it some love. It's not the stepchild here, okay? Don't go for little baby 6.1 before you check out the bigger 6.6 and see whether it's going to work for you. It's a great phone, it's a great weight, it feels great in your hand, the software looks beautiful. I'm loving enjoying this right now as my everyday driver. Let me know your questions and comments below. Thanks for watching. Till next time, let's go out there and be amazing.